Well, that came after we were talking about the film. They just have a book out on the thing.
Clint Eastwood has spent a lifetime playing men who never flinched, never backed down, and never showed fear. But at 95, the Hollywood legend finally said something no one ever expected. In a rare moment of candor, he admitted he's ready for the end. Not out of weakness, but out of a strange, quiet completeness. The man who survived every era of cinema, who reinvented the Western, who turned grit into art, now says he has told every story he needed to tell. And for the first time, the world could hear the exhaustion behind the steel, the peace behind the silence. It wasn't sensational, it was haunting. Because when Clint Eastwood decides he's finished, it means something far deeper than retirement. And the truth behind why he feels this way begins long before Hollywood ever knew his name. He wasn't born a legend. He was forged by survival, long before Hollywood ever shaped him. Clint Eastwood grew up during the brutal years of the Great Depression, dragged from town to town as his family searched for work. Those restless early years taught him something no acting school ever could: silence, resilience, and the art of enduring without complaint. He learned to rely on himself, to study people quietly, to let stillness speak louder than words. It was the foundation of the Eastwood presence the world would one day worship. The stare, the grit, the unshakable calm. As a teenager, he worked any job he could find: lumberjack, lifeguard, steel worker. Each one built another layer of toughness, another reason he never feared hard work or long odds. But it was his next chapter that would shape him even deeper, one that demanded discipline, control, and a kind of maturity most young men never even face. And that chapter began the moment the U.S. Army came calling. The military didn't make him a hero, but it carved the edges of the man he would become. When Clint Eastwood was drafted into the U.S. Army during the Korean War, he didn't see combat, but he did face something just as defining: discipline. For the first time, his quiet resilience had structure, his silence had purpose. The wandering kid shaped by the Great Depression was suddenly forced into routines, expectations, and a strict code that demanded self-control. It was here that he learned how to command his body, his voice, his emotions, skills that later made his on-screen stillness feel volcanic rather than empty. Clint spent his days training, observing, absorbing, and in that environment, he discovered something essential. Power doesn't come from loudness. It comes from certainty, intention, and the ability to stay calm when others can't. Little did he know that this calm, hardened by military discipline, would soon collide with the rejection-filled chaos of Hollywood, testing whether he could endure a different kind of battle. And that battle began the moment he set foot in Los Angeles. Hollywood didn't welcome him. It tried to spit him out. When Clint Eastwood arrived in Los Angeles, he faced a different kind of battlefield: casting rooms filled with rejection, agents who said he was too tall, too lean, too strange-looking, and producers who saw no future in his rugged, unpolished style. Every door seemed to close as soon as he knocked. But Clint wasn't wired to quit. The discipline forged in the Army and the resilience built during the Depression pushed him forward. He kept studying, kept auditioning, kept absorbing every no until it became fuel. His first years were filled with small roles, forgettable bit parts, and contracts that barely kept him afloat. Yet behind the setbacks, something was taking shape. A screen presence that didn't need words, didn't need theatrics, just needed a camera to catch the storm behind his stillness. And all it took was one lucky break to change everything. That break arrived in 1959, and it would launch a new kind of American icon. He didn't just get a break, he got a rebirth. When Sergio Leone cast Clint Eastwood in A Fistful of Dollars, 1964, everything Hollywood said was wrong about him suddenly became iconic. The towering frame, the narrowed eyes, the silence that spoke louder than dialogue. Leone didn't just accept those traits. He built an entire genre around them. In Italy, Clint finally found a world where brooding stillness was power, where a man's presence mattered more than perfect polish. As the man with no name, he delivered a performance that redefined the Western hero, morally ambiguous, cold, magnetic, and unforgettable. Audiences worldwide were mesmerized. Every close-up, every squint, every slow draw of a cigarette added a new layer to his legend. And with each sequel that followed, his myth grew larger, darker, sharper. When Clint returned to America, he wasn't the struggling actor Hollywood had dismissed. He was a global star, and his next transformation would cement him as an American cultural icon forever. He returned to America not as a hopeful actor, but as a force Hollywood couldn't ignore. And in 1971, Clint Eastwood unleashed the role that would redefine him once again. Dirty Harry Callahan. The moment he stepped on screen with that .44 Magnum and delivered the immortal line, "Go ahead, make my day," a new American myth was born. Dirty Harry wasn't polished, clean-cut, or comforting. He was raw, weathered, morally torn, exactly the kind of hero a restless nation connected with. Clint's cold intensity and quiet menace fit perfectly into a world grappling with rising crime and social tension. He wasn't just acting a role, he was holding a mirror to the fears and frustrations of an entire generation. The film's success didn't just revive the American Western spirit, it cemented Eastwood as a cultural pillar. But even while the world celebrated his swaggering toughness, Clint was quietly preparing for an evolution no one saw coming. Because his next chapter would reveal a master behind the camera. He had conquered the screen. Now he wanted to conquer the story. When Clint Eastwood stepped behind the camera for Play Misty for Me, 1971, the world finally saw the artist hidden beneath the gunslinger. His directing style was nothing like Hollywood's excess. He filmed fast, trusted his instincts, and refused unnecessary flair. He didn't chase drama, he carved truth. Over the next 5 decades, he delivered masterpiece after masterpiece: Unforgiven, $1 Million Baby, Gran Torino, American Sniper, The Mule, each one stripped down, human, honest. Clint didn't just direct films, he dissected the human condition. He explored guilt, redemption, aging, violence, forgiveness, and audiences followed him decade after decade because his stories felt lived, not imagined. His power behind the camera rivaled, and arguably surpassed, anything he ever did in front of it. Hollywood had gained not just a star, but a storyteller of rare depth. But even as his career soared to legendary heights, his personal life was unraveling in ways few ever understood. He commanded the screen with unshakable strength, but love was a battlefield he never truly mastered. Behind Clint Eastwood's legendary career lay a personal life marked by passion, distance, and heartbreak. His first marriage to Maggie Johnson lasted over 3 decades, surviving fame, pressure, and long absences, yet slowly crumbling under the weight of Hollywood and Clint's restless nature. She remained a grounding force, but the man the world saw as unbreakable was often unreachable at home. Years later, his marriage to Dina Ruiz brought warmth and renewal, yet even that chapter, filled with joy, a daughter, and newfound softness, eventually unraveled. The age gap, the spotlight, and Clint's lifelong independence took their toll. For a man who played heroes, Clint's real struggle was intimacy. He loved deeply, but on his own terms that didn't always align with the people who loved him back. And as the years passed, another truth began to settle quietly into his bones, one that would change the way he saw the rest of his life. Because soon, Clint Eastwood would confront the one enemy even he couldn't outdraw. Time itself. Time didn't break him. It softened him. As Clint Eastwood entered his 90s, the man who had outworked, outlasted, and outstared entire generations finally began listening to the quiet inside himself. He spent more days at his Carmel home, walking by the ocean, trading film sets for silence. And in that stillness, he realized something he had never allowed himself to feel before: completion. He wasn't tired. He wasn't defeated. He was simply, done. He had told his stories, fought his battles, and lived a life fuller than he ever expected. For the first time, Clint admitted he no longer needed the chase, no longer needed applause or cameras or the pressure to be larger than life. He just wanted peace, real peace, the kind he had never tasted during his 7 decades in the spotlight. But accepting peace also meant facing a truth far harder to say out loud. The truth behind why he wants it all to end. In the end, his reason wasn't tragic. It was profound. Clint Eastwood finally admitted that he wants it all to end because, for the first time in his life, he feels complete. After more than 70 years shaping American cinema, he no longer sees purpose in stretching a story that already has a perfect final frame. "You don't want to stay too long at the party," he said quietly. "There's dignity in knowing when to leave." This wasn't surrender. It was control. The same control he carried through every role, every film, every decision. He wants his exit to reflect the man he has always been: intentional, steady, unshaken. Hollywood rarely lets legends choose their own ending. Clint refuses to let Hollywood choose his, and with that decision, he embraces something he spent a lifetime avoiding: letting go. Because for Clint Eastwood, the end isn't a defeat. It's the final act of a life fully lived. He may be stepping away, but his shadow will never leave the screen. Clint Eastwood's legacy isn't just the films he made. It's the spine he gave to American storytelling. Every squint, every pause, every line delivered in that quiet, dangerous calm became part of the nation's cultural DNA. He showed the world that heroes didn't need capes or speeches, just conviction. Across more than 70 years, he reinvented the Western, reshaped the action hero, and elevated filmmaking into something raw, human, and brutally honest. Future generations will study his work the way one studies history, not for entertainment, but for understanding. And fans, young and old, will always return to his movies when they need a reminder of what strength looks like when spoken softly. Clint walks away now with dignity. But the characters he brought to life will continue fighting long after he's gone, because legends don't fade, they echo, and Clint Eastwood's echo will outlive us all.